Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in the United States on September 22nd, kicking off a high-profile visit aimed at securing more support for Kyiv's ongoing war efforts against Russia. While Zelensky will address the United Nations General Assembly and meet with US officials, the trip underscores Ukraine's mounting challenges, including a critical shortage of ammunition that has hampered its battlefield capabilities. Zelensky's tour began at the Scranton Army Ammunition Plant in Pennsylvania, one of the few US facilities producing the 155 mm artillery shells that have become indispensable to Ukraine's defense against Russia. Despite receiving over 3 million of these shells from the US, Ukraine continues to face shortages as Russian forces maintain pressure in eastern Ukraine and strategic areas like the Kursk border. Underlining the desperate need for supplies, Zelensky expressed gratitude to American workers but conveyed an urgent message: "Thank you, and we need more." The visit to Scranton underscores a worrying trend in Kyiv's war effort: the dwindling stockpile of critical munitions. Despite the ramped-up production of shells, Ukrainian forces have struggled to counter Russia's advances, prompting Zelensky to push allies for long-range weapons and further aid. Zelensky also stated that his meeting with President Biden would be the first opportunity to present Ukraine's victory plan. However, the plan, yet to be disclosed, comes as Ukraine's military position remains precarious, with Russian forces holding portions of southeastern Ukraine and continuing to target key infrastructure. While Zelensky insists that this fall will determine the future of this war, the reality on the ground appears less optimistic. Ukraine's counteroffensive has stalled in many areas, exacerbated by a shortage of weapons, particularly artillery shells. Ukraine's plea for more weapons stands in stark contrast to Russian President Vladimir Putin's continued military strength. Moscow's forces have fortified positions across the southeastern regions, and Russian officials have made clear they would not attend peace talks unless Ukraine surrenders those territories. Zelensky, however, remains adamant that Ukraine will not negotiate without guarantees for a just peace, a position that could isolate Kyiv as the war drags on with no clear end in sight. The Scranton visit sets the tone for Zelensky's broader push for additional US support as he meets with President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and even former President Donald Trump later this week. Yet, with public support for the war dwindling in the West and concerns mounting over the sustainability of military aid, Zelensky's appeals may increasingly fall on deaf ears. Zelensky's struggle to secure weapons from allies may be a reflection of Ukraine's waning momentum. As winter approaches, the Ukrainian leader faces the daunting task of convincing US officials that additional arms shipments are essential, even as reports surface of delays in US aid and growing skepticism among lawmakers. Ukraine's situation becomes increasingly dire as Russian forces remain entrenched, and Putin continues to demand Ukraine's territorial concessions. Zelensky's visit to the US is as much a diplomatic mission as it is a plea for survival. Without a significant boost in military supplies, Ukraine's chances of success grow dim, leaving Zelensky with few options as the war enters its third winter. Ever since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and then invaded Ukraine in 2022, top NATO commanders and US munitions plant officials have been warning that the munitions industry wasn't ready to ramp up production in wartime. But these warnings went largely ignored, leading many artillery production lines in the US and Europe to slow down or shut down. Bruce Jeter, who was the US Army Assistant Secretary from 2018 to 2021, told Reuters that it's a problem that's been long in the making. Reuters found that production of the 155mm shell dropped so much that no new shells were added to the US stockpile from mid-2014 to late 2015. Adding to the problem were repeated shutdowns of production lines due to defects and safety issues. In 2021, cracks found in shells halved production for months. Plus, a costly decision to change the type of explosive used in the shells hasn't paid off, with the Army spending $147 million on an unused facility, according to Reuters.
We were talking about it all the time. What are we going to do if we get into a war here? We can't just ramp this stuff up in one day. We're in a bad situation.
Plans to replace an old propellant plant in Virginia are a decade behind schedule and nearly twice as expensive as expected, making the US rely more on overseas raw materials. One backup plan involved getting explosives from a factory in eastern Ukraine, but Russia took it over early in the war. Artillery has been a game changer in this conflict, causing over 80% of casualties on both sides, according to Ukrainian military estimates. Major Anton Bayev, who coordinates artillery support in the Crimea forest, said his brigade often had only 4 shells a day to cover a vast area. Because of the shortage, Ukrainian forces have had to switch from offense to defense. 6 frontline units described a sudden lack of artillery they believe changed the war's direction. One senior Ukrainian officer told Reuters that fewer daily shells led to a big increase in casualties.
It's very important for our infantry to hear the sound of our artillery every hour just to understand that they are not alone in the field.
This crisis shows bigger strategic and industrial missteps. US officials thought the defense industry could quickly ramp up production if needed, but they were wrong. A 2023 Army review pointed out failures to prepare for war, citing environmental regulations, bureaucracy, erratic funding, and a tendency to divert ammunition funds to other programs.
When and why did it happen? The world can't be secure without America. America cannot be a leader and a world dream maker without caring for world affairs. America should not shy away from its strengths. It is America that keeps the freedom for the world. That's why the world values America, America which acts.
Efforts to switch from TNT to a more environmentally friendly explosive, IMX-101, slowed production and were more costly, according to Reuters. Last summer, the Army went back to using TNT, boosting production by 25%. But moving away from TNT in 2014 and relying on a single TNT plant in Poland, along with a now inaccessible factory in Ukraine, has made the shortage worse, the Reuters investigation reveals. As the US and its allies scramble to boost production, Ukrainian forces face the harsh reality of being outgunned. Several experts believe that the West's slow response and past mistakes have left Ukraine in a tough spot, showing the urgent need to rethink defense production strategies.